Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have drones. Drones aren't a new piece of technology, but they are most definitely becoming more widespread. In fact, there have been surveys conducted that suggest that drones are actually the piece of technology that is up and coming that the general public fears the most. Part of this, or really a lot of this, is due to the fact that since this technology evolved so quickly, the laws and regulations surrounding them haven't exactly had the time to catch up. Drones can be super useful and are a brilliant piece of technology when used responsibly, but considering how the Federal Aviation Administration regulations don't really directly address residential areas, this creates a problem for those who don't know about the drone or about the user's intention. Sometimes when someone just wants to fly their drone and enjoys this piece of technology, it can make others feel like they're being spied on. In our number 9 spot today, we have pathogens. I am talking specifically about those that are weaponized. Back in 2005, Ray Kurzweil and Bill Joy noted that publishing the genomes of deadly viruses where the entire world could see would be the perfect setup for destruction, and it's possible that they might have been right. Like with anything, there is always the possibility that some person or group will take this knowledge and use it to their advantage to do something horrible, and the same goes for these viral recipes. There is also the possibility of accidental leaks while people are researching. One positive thing of these genomes explanations is that people can study these viruses, they can get to know them, and hopefully also learn their countermeasures, but in doing so, this sometimes creates an even more deadly version, and this could wreak an unbelievable amount of havoc on the world. Whether accidental or purposefully being weaponized, these viruses could change the world as we know it. In our number 8 spot today, we have self-driving cars. The issue isn't with the self-drive per se. I mean, there are plenty of reasons why this step makes sense, why it could be exponentially helpful, and why there are people who are clearly on board with the idea, but there are also some things that are rightfully a major cause for concern. One of the most debated and truly one of the biggest questions surrounding this is an ethical one, like, will a self-driving car prioritize its driver or passenger or operator, whatever you want to call them, over other road users, and not just over other road users, but at the expense of other road users. Also, what happens when the car is left with a decision to either collide with one person or another? A car couldn't take into account any other sort of extenuating circumstances like a human would. In our number 7 spot today, we have autonomous AI. Okay, so there's a Harvard professor named Nick Bostrom, and he devised this thought experiment that really does show us the dangers of this sort of super intelligence. So basically, he made this hypothetical scenario where a paperclip company, you know, all the huge corporations that are dedicated to just making paperclips, if they made some sort of AI robot thing that is tasked with the one single goal of creating as many paperclips for the company. In theory, this is amazing. There's so many paperclips, we don't know what to do with them. Paperclip stocks are higher than they've ever been, and this robot has put that little guy on the computer screen straight out of business. But now, something has happened. This robot, which only knows paperclips and only knows it's supposed to create as many as possible, obviously takes this job very seriously, and it's a robot, so it doesn't know about everything else in the world. So this robot, in order to complete its mission, starts to take other resources, such as those we need to survive, in order to create these paperclips because it doesn't know anything else. In doing this and fulfilling its paperclip destiny, it wipes out humanity in the process. Of course, this is an extreme hypothetical, but it's definitely something to think about. This is just one hypothetical scenario out of many that could potentially arise. In our number 6 spot today, we have automation. Okay, it's no secret that robots have been putting people out of work. I mean, it's something we've seen for years, and as technology advances, there are jobs that were once done by humans that are now being done by Siri. Bad example, but you get what I mean. It is said that this trend, however, of robots doing human jobs is only on the rise. As an example, something we just talked about, self-driving cars, it is said that this new piece of technology will soon put 5 million Americans out of jobs. That's a lot. I mean, if taxi companies or Uber can somehow find a way to remove the middleman, you know they would in order to rake in more cash for themselves. This issue isn't just with this, however. It is said that by 2030, nearly 70 million people could lose their jobs due to automation. Is it efficient? Yes. Is it potentially very harmful? Also yes. In our number 5 spot today we have virtual reality. Okay, another piece of technology that isn't new, but it is definitely more widespread now, and that is virtual reality. It's a super fun piece of technology, or it can be absolutely terrifying, and people are legitimately worried about it. People have raised concerns over how this sort of technology might affect our brains, more specifically our memories. There are worries that younger people using these sorts of technologies might end up creating these sort of false memories under the influence of virtual reality. This, however, is something that does need a lot more study to confirm if these sort of effects really do exist and if they are happening, and if so, whether they outweigh the benefits. In our number 4 spot today we have artificial superintelligence. We talked about autonomous AI, but this is something pretty different. Stephen Hawking once said that artificial superintelligence could be our worst mistake in history. As humans, we have been able to dominate this world because of our intelligence, so introducing something that is far smarter and a lot faster than us would mean that we are no longer at the top. We'd kind of just be at the mercy of whatever this superintelligence wanted to do, and as of right now, it's not clear that we could create a friendly enough version to safely be able to do this. Unless we are able to be sure that this wouldn't happen, it remains an idea that has a lot of people pretty freaked out. In our number 3 spot today we have nanotechnology. I'll be honest with you guys, this is a technology that I have an extremely basic understanding of because it is a technology for people who are way smarter than me. Technology buffs have been clear, however, that weaponized or just absolutely botched molecular assembling nanotechnology is one of the biggest threats to face when it comes to technological advancements. The threat comes from two places. One is unchecked self-replication and the other is exponential growth. If someone decided to use this kind of technology to do evil, or if it even simply fell into the wrong hands, this kind of nanotechnology could lead to the creation of microscopic machines that consume all of our critical resources at an insanely quick pace while also replicating itself at the same time. It's a bit of a complicated idea, but with how fast technology changes and advances, there are some people who are worried about this kind of technology entering the world. In our number 2 spot today we have data trafficking. This point is mostly about how our technology in some areas has outpaced the regulations behind it. Similar to the discussion about drones, data trafficking is another one of those things that people have just used to their advantage, not worrying about the detriment it might bring to others. What I mean when I say data trafficking is the sharing of other people's data without their control or their awareness. Throughout the history of the internet, there's been a countless amount of rules and regulations that have been introduced because, of course, when the internet was born, no one was prepared for exactly what was to come. This became abundantly clear with the creation of social media as well. Many people claim that data trafficking is something that not only undermines people's personal liberty, but maybe even democracy itself. In our number 1 spot today we have cryptocurrency. Okay, this is one thing that I'll admit, it has the power and potential to be great, but it could also be pretty detrimental to our world as well. Before you crypto fanatics totally freak out, hear me out. Right now, cryptocurrency is largely inaccessible. This means that it's mostly being used to make rich people richer, while other people end up poorer. That could change, but that's just where things are right now. The positive side with crypto, however, is the underlying technology that allows it, blockchain. This technology is one that could be and really is quite transformative. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Greek fire. Greek fire is essentially the primitive form of napalm, and it was first created in Greece. It was used often and efficiently for naval battles during the Byzantine Empire. It was used and worked well for these battles because it was able to not only float on top of the water, but it also was difficult to put out the fire using water as well. The secrets regarding this substance were guarded so greatly as it was such a powerful weapon at the time. The information on what it was made out of, how it was stored, or how it functioned remains a mystery to this day. The formula to recreate it has been tried many times, but it is currently thought that the particular storage and some sort of pressurized delivery system are what played such a huge role in its functionality and ignition, and we have yet to figure out those secrets. In our number 9 spot today we have flexible glass. This is something that is actually sometimes debated on whether or not it actually existed at all, but there is some evidence and anecdotes that would suggest it absolutely did at one point. The stories surrounding this lost creation depict a glassmaker who presents a glass vessel which holds various different things depending on where the story came from and who's telling it. The glass vessel was presented to the emperor, who inspected it before returning it to the glassmaker, who then threw it on the ground. The glassmaker then picks it up off of the ground and goes on to show the emperor that rather than broken pieces, the glass vessel just has a small dent in it, which he then proceeds to hammer back to the original shape, and thus the vessel now appears as if it had never taken any damage at all. It is said from here that rather than the emperor being excited about this new and useful creation, he began to worry that it would devalue things like the silver and gold already in circulation. This is said to have led to him ensuring that no one else knew the formula to create the flexible glass, and then subsequently beheading the poor glassmaker. This is what has ensured that if it ever were real, the flexible glass was a secret formula destined to stay in the past. In our number 8 spot today we have Damascus steel. It's possible you may have heard of Damascus steel before, and that is because the name still exists, and it is used in reference to a variety of pattern welded forged steel products, but the modern day stuff just isn't what it used to be. Historically, Damascus steel was discovered quite a long time ago, and it was used to make swords in the Middle East. It is said that these swords had the ability to cut through rocks or even completely cut through other swords, which is just insane. The exact process of how these swords were made has been lost to time, but it is rumored that Wootz steel was imported from Sri Lanka and used in the creation process along with other metals. Somehow the metals were basically weaved together rather than an alloy being created. This is what led to the steel not only being exceptionally strong, but also flexible, and it is this process that modern day smiths cannot seem to exactly replicate. The modern day Damascus products are definitely high quality, gorgeous products, but it seems as though the secrets of the past may hold something even better. In our number 7 spot today we have silphium. This is less of a technology and more of something that was once naturally occurring and used for a multitude of things, but is now lost. Silphium is a lost genus of fennel plant that was used quite a bit during the Roman times. It was used as a form of birth control as well as a cure for many ailments. The plant is said to have been plentiful once along the coast of what is now Libya. Apparently this plant was something that was highly valued, and it even appeared on several forms of currency because it was so highly appreciated. It is speculated that this plant may have grown only in a small portion of the world, and it was simply just over-harvested until it was driven to extinction. It wasn't used by everyone when it was used, and this could be because it was probably quite expensive. So while this wasn't a man-made creation or technology, I feel like it definitely still applies to today's list as a plant, and its medical properties are something that just may be lost forever. In our number 6 spot today we have the pyramids. Alright, I'm just gonna ask, how the heck were the pyramids built? The more I learn about it, the more I'm convinced it must have been aliens, because it just seems so crazy and intricate and impossibly amazing. The pyramids of ancient Egypt may just appear to be amazing, incredible tombs that are something to be jealous of, but they really are so much more than that. Not only have they given researchers and historians incredible insight to what life in ancient Egypt was like, they have also opened the doors to some of the greatest mysteries. Firstly, there was the transportation of the massive stones that they used, some of which are believed to have come from nearly 500 miles away. Getting all of the materials from point A to point B is more than fascinating in itself, but there's more questions. There were not iron tools or chisels at the time, so how were they able to shape their stonework with such incredible precision? How were they able to finish the tops of the pyramids with the same precision despite their standing over 400 feet tall? And how were they able to build them in such a way that they've been able to withstand all of the elements for 4,500 years? You see what I mean at this point? It is clear that however they were able to build the pyramids in ancient Egypt, we just don't have that kind of technology or knowledge nowadays, because there is no way we'd be able to recreate these amazing structures in the same way as the original. Because people are gonna be like, we could create the pyramids. I'm like, I know we could now, Mr. Crane Operator, but imagine having to go up there all by yourself. No crane in sight, just you and a big old rock. Good luck. In our number 5 spot today we have the SLOOT coding system. Okay, this one isn't exactly ancient, but I still had to talk about it today because I had never even heard of this at all before. Jan Sloot was a Dutch electronics engineer, and in the mid to late 90s he created a data storage method that could hold an entire full-length movie in just 8 kilobytes of data. Considering most modern technologies still require much more data to store a full-length movie, this kind of technology was extremely impressive for the times. Investors of course quickly began to flock to Jan, Jan. When he presented his data storage system to a man named Roll Piper from Philips, Roll ended up later leaving Philips in order to join Jan's company. Just days before the code and system was due to be released, Jan ended up being found dead in his garden from what seemed to be a heart attack. This is of course extremely tragic and sad, but you might be sitting there thinking the same thing that I was. His death probably didn't stop people from still seeking the answers that had yet to be released on how this storage system was created. Well, as it turns out, people of course did look, but a key piece of information regarding it all was on a floppy disk that was in Jan's possession. Since his death, no one has ever been able to find this floppy disk that is said to hold these secrets. In our number 4 spot today, we have the ANTIKYTHERA mechanism. The ANTIKYTHERA mechanism is an extremely mysterious discovery that has stumped researchers ever since it was found. This artifact was found 150 feet below the surface of the Aegean Sea in a shipwreck and is the oldest kind of computer ever recorded, as it was dated back to the 7th century BCE. The author David Childress likened the finding to if they had found a jet plane in King Tut's tomb. That's how bizarre this discovery really was. Due to the complexity and oddity of the finding, alien enthusiasts have believed for quite some time that it may have been technology that was passed down from some sort of superior being. This first analog computer may have had a ton of uses, and researchers aren't 100% sure about all the ways it was used, but it is known to have been some sort of astronomical calculator. It was able to predict eclipses and different planetary placements. The mechanism was able to calculate the position and running time of each planet. How would they have been able to create this without the use of sophisticated astronomical tools? We have been able to recreate the mechanism to see how it functions, but no one is able to tell how it could have possibly been created. In our number 3 spot today, we have Mithridate. Mithridate was named after King Mithridate VI, who was the king of Pontus. It is said that he was so terribly afraid of being poisoned that he, over the course of 7 years, adapted his body to different poisons. It is also said that after mixing 45 ingredients together, he was able to create Mithridate, which is said to have been a universal antidote to all poisons. The exact formula has of course been lost to time, but historians have said that it is believed that the antidote contained opium, chopped vipers, and small amounts of both the poisons and their antidotes. Imagine, just opium, just throw it in there, why not? The antidote was originally created around 100 BCE, and it was actually used by many people for centuries, and even apparently as recently as the 19th century. It is unclear how the recipe entirely disappeared, but despite some of the best efforts, no one has been able to recreate it since the last known use. In our number 2 spot today, we have Stradivari violins. If you're a string instrument enthusiast, then you definitely have heard of the Stradivari family and the instruments created by them. These instruments were created by 1650 and 1750 and were highly sought after in their day, and even more so now. Apparently, these instruments featured an unparalleled sound quality that has been found to be impossible to recreate. The instruments that have survived through to modern day are now worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, so it is abundantly clear that these instruments are incredibly valuable. Here's the catch though. Experts can't agree or figure out what exactly it is that makes them sound so wonderful. Some have speculated that the magnificent sound comes from a fungus that grew in the region, and some think that it is the density of the wood, but regardless, no one really knows for sure. At the end of the day, the secrets of the family art were laid to rest with the Stradivari family. In our number 1 spot today, we have Roman cement. Concrete is the most commonly used building material in the world, but our current cement, water, sand, rocks mixture is nothing compared to the original stuff. While our modern concrete was created in the 1700s, there was obviously stuff that was being used before. In fact, concrete was used quite a bit during the antiquity by Egyptians, Assyrians, and Romans. The Romans seemingly used it the most, and they are the ones who really perfected the recipe that we just can't seem to replicate now. Apparently, the ancient mixture involved burnt limestone as well as crushed rocks and water, but whatever the heck it was, their structures were a lot more withstanding than ours are now, which has led people to question, how do we get that level of hardiness back in our modern day concrete? And to that I say, like most other things, I do not know. Perhaps this is just another mystery lost to time. Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot, we have a death ray. Archimedes, if that's how you say it, was born in 287 BC in the city-state of Syracuse, which at the time was a part of ancient Greece, but now would be a part of Sicily. When the Roman army set sail to lay siege on Syracuse, he began trying to find ways to deal with protecting his home and ways to bring death to those in the Roman army. He used his knowledge of physics to build a weapon that would help fend off those sailing into the city. While he managed to make quite a few effective and honestly very cool gadgets in order to fight these men off, the one we are here to talk about today is the death ray. While this sounds like some sort of crazy laser beam, it is surprisingly much simpler despite us not being able to recreate it today. The death ray was a series of mirrors that reflected concentrated sunlight onto the Roman ships. If you've ever used a magnifying glass in sunlight, you know where this is going. Those concentrated rays of sunlight were enough to set the ships ablaze, and it is said that ship after ship of the Roman fleet all caught fire, only to then sink into the Mediterranean. Many attempts to recreate the death ray have of course happened, and some have been moderately successful, but not in the way that this historical story suggests. Maybe he just had that magic touch. In our number 9 spot today we have ULFBERHT. This mysterious sword has been confusing ever since it was discovered by archaeologists. Experts were able to date this sword back to the Viking era sometime from 800 to 1000 AD, but no one could figure out how this sword was made, especially from what technologies were available at the time. It seemed as though this sword was made using techniques that didn't exist until 800 years later when the Industrial Revolution happened, so how could it have been made all this time before? It is said that everything about the sword, from the composition of the metal to the extreme heat needed to forge the blade, it just couldn't have been done at the time, but clearly it was. So how? A blacksmith who tried to recreate the sword using only methods that would have been used then explained that he was unable to make it without resorting to more modern technology. In our number 8 spot today we have NEPENTHE. If you're a person who's ever had to be subjected to the process that is antidepressant medication, this one might frustrate you just a little bit. The ancient Greeks and Romans discovered a lot of things, some of which we use now and some that seem to have been lost but could have potentially proved to be exceptionally useful to us, and that is exactly what this one is. Ancient Greeks were known to treat the bereaved with this medicine that seems to have been some sort of a primitive antidepressant. It is said that it was known for its ability to chase sorrow away and also to cause forgetfulness. There are many references to this medicinal plant, but at this point we are completely unsure of which modern plant aligns with these ancient descriptions, or if it even exists at all anymore. In our number 7 spot today we have the TELHARMONIUM. The TELHARMONIUM is regarded as one of the world's first electronic instruments. This instrument was kind of like an organ, but it used wheels to create different synthetic tones. From here, the tones would be transmitted over telephone wires with the intention of getting the music broadcast so that people could listen in. Considering the fact that this instrument was created in 1897, that's a pretty cool invention for the time, so the fact that it once existed is super cool. Unfortunately, however, the idea was taking too much energy from the grid, which led to it being totally scrapped. Instead of finding out another way to use this instrument or just waiting for technology to advance to a point where this would be able to be used, they just destroyed it. Now, in 2021, not only does the TELHARMONIUM not exist, but there aren't even any recordings of it, so it seems as though this might be one thing that's lost forever. In our number 6 spot today we have the Library of Alexandria. This isn't necessarily technology as we now think of the word, but this certainly was one of the greatest losses we've seen. This library is said to have held a collection of over 1 million scrolls, which are said to have been all of the written works in the world at the time. The library was founded in 300 BC, and it was where the scholars of the time would come to study. It is said that when a person visited the library, they needed to give over any books that they had so that they could be copied and added to the collection of the library. It isn't exactly clear what it was that destroyed it, but rumors range from Julius Caesar accidentally setting it on fire to an invasion that set it ablaze. At the end of the day, the building burned and everything in it was destroyed. What was in that building was absolutely priceless, and we can only guess at what secrets it held. Unfortunately, many of what was in that library wasn't written anywhere else, so it's destined to stay a mystery. In our number 5 spot today we have CLOUDBUSTER. In the 1950s, a man named William Reich created a pseudoscientific thing that was called a cloudbuster. It is said that this device could manipulate a certain energy that would affect the atmosphere, which would then change the patterns of the weather. The energy that the device is said to manipulate starlight is called Oregon Energy. It is said that they actually used this device on a farm in the 1950s, and it actually worked when it ended up calling down rain. Apparently people have tried to make modern cloudbusters, but to severe consequences for both the person who made it as well as the area surrounding their invention. Many people are wondering now if this cloudbuster ever actually worked, and if it did, how? Because we just can't seem to make anything like it. If you had a working cloudbuster, what would you do with it? Do you make a snowstorm? A perfectly rainy day? I don't know. Let me know down below in the comments what you would do. In our number 4 spot today we have Starlight. Starlight was created in the 1970s and 80s by a British hairstylist and amateur chemist, Maurice Ward. What Starlight was a heat-resistant plastic that was basically indestructible. This plastic could withstand temperatures of 10,000 degrees Celsius, and it could withstand a force 75 times that of Hiroshima. Of course, when people heard about this invention, it became the talk of the town. When Maurice brought the material on TV, he covered an egg in Starlight, blasted it with a blowtorch for 5 minutes, and then when the Starlight was peeled back, the egg was still cold. NASA of course wanted to know what the heck Starlight was and how they could get their hands on it, but Maurice was really worried about what would happen if his invention fell into the wrong hands. This led to him keeping the makeup of Starlight a complete secret that he took with him to his grave. It has been said that the company ThermaShield has been able to replicate Starlight when they received the rights in 2013, so maybe this one will be making a comeback after all. In our number 3 spot today we have the Apollo Gemini space program technology. This isn't necessarily technology that has been entirely lost, but it has been the source of many confused scientists. The race to get to space was a fast, cutthroat one with everyone trying to be the first. With everyone running around trying to create all of these new technologies before anyone else, and with private contractors being brought on for certain things in order to help, all of the schematics and original components are so disorganized and scattered that now NASA staff are trying to reverse engineer the entire thing to see how it all worked together in tandem. Not to mention how those private contractors of course took all of their records with them, leaving no records behind for anyone to be able to get a full view of how this was all able to take place. I guess no matter the rush, it's equally as important to keep the documentation. You would think that NASA would have had someone just to keep documents, right? I feel like there's gotta be someone out there who's got that job now. In our number 2 spot today we have the WARDENCLYFFE Tower. This tower was also known as the Tesla Tower, so I'm sure you can guess who built it. This tower was an early experimental wireless transmission station that was designed by Nikola Tesla. It was located in Long Island in 1901 and 1902. So here's the thing, the industrialist J.P. Morgan was the one who asked Tesla to create this wireless tower that could send messages across the world. Okay, sweet. That's super useful to us, so that would be great, right? Well, what Tesla built was even better. It was a device that would transmit free electricity across the world. What? Free electricity? That's amazing! Well, when Mr. Morgan found out, he shut the project down, had the tower destroyed, and ruined it for everyone. Imagine we all had free energy right now. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little irritated now that I know this. Tesla's ability to wirelessly power light bulbs and other devices short distances is something that we still cannot replicate or implement in an economic way today. In our number 1 spot today we have the Tesla oscillator. Have you ever wanted to live through an earthquake on purpose? No? Me neither. And good thing we don't, because this little old gadget doesn't exist anymore. Apparently Nikola Tesla did though, when he built the Tesla oscillator, also known as the earthquake machine. This oscillator resonated at such a frequency it shook the buildings around him. While this wasn't the intended use, this is what ended up happening. It is said that he couldn't get it to shut down, so then he had to take a sledgehammer to it to destroy it and stop the shaking. Since this destruction and accidental earthquake, no one has ever been able to replicate the same sort of thing, and that's probably a good thing, to be perfectly honest.